This is Put Together Conversations. For those of you, are we centered?
Yeah, according to Madeline.
Oh, thank you, Madeline. Maddie is one of my adopted sisters. So love you, Matt. Thanks for joining us. For those of you that have been following Conversations, this is a spin-off of Put Together podcast. So the guests that come on the show had been guests on my podcast already. You guys know Life Coach Tommy. He's been on the air a couple of times. And as usual, they get to choose the topic that we'll discuss today. And today's topic, again, for those of you that are just tuning in, is...
Addiction to the past.
Addiction to the past. Now, why did you choose that topic?
Well, first of all, whoops, pause due to poor connection. Okay, there we go. First of all, hey, how are you?
How's it going?
First of all, so as a life coach, I show people how to stay present and, hey Tim, how to stay present and not necessarily let go of the past, because there are a lot of people who come to me and it's like, I just want to learn how to let go of the past. And I'm like, that's impossible.
Right.
The past, no matter, unless you suffer severe brain damage, the past is always going to be there. It has obviously huge, deep psychological impact on who you are today. But while we can't ever let the past go, there are attributes of the past that we can focus on to use to enhance our present experience.
And as usual, let me remind you guys, if you have any questions as we're going along, or if you need us to repeat something, let us know. My laptop is right here in front of me, so we can answer any questions. And as most of the times when the situation calls for it, I can use myself as an example so that we can move the story forward. So it's interesting you said that, because there's a couple of things that are going on this week. I think I mentioned it to you when we were prepping for the show. This Friday, June 21st, is my 13th recovery birthday. So I've been clean and sober. Thank you. I've been clean and sober now. It'll be 13 years this Friday. Over the last several years since cancer, I've developed a little bit of more anxiety, agoraphobia, panic attacks. I do think that it has to do with things from my past. That's the part we're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's, definitely the emotional uncomfortableness that you're experiencing, the stuff, and calling it emotional uncomfortableness is sort of a devaluing statement, because it's intense what you're experiencing. Agoraphobia and all that stuff that you're experiencing here in the present is influenced by focusing on things from the past. Right. For example, excuse me. And again, I'm a life coach, and I'm not a clinical psychologist or even a psychiatrist. So there are a lot of things about agoraphobia that I'm not licensed to comment on as an expert. But I do know, as a life coach, that being agoraphobic is affected by things that have happened in the past. Right. On a clinical level, there could be a chemical imbalance that is causing the deep phobia. But as a life coach, I focus on cognitive, not necessarily cognitive behavioral therapy, because again, I'm not a licensed therapist, but that's my approach, is what can we do for emotional behavioral changes that can help those things, and addressing the past issues, but not on the level of clinical psychology where, we dig deep and, uncover all of these things that are affecting you.
Right. So it's more about confronting what the issue is and see how we can adjust it or change it, maybe?
Yeah. Essentially, what are we putting our focus on? What from our past are we focusing on? And that's my goal, is to help either, if it's not bringing value to our present, I help my clients stop focusing on it or focusing it on a different way. Same thing with people who suffer from addiction. The bad news is addiction will never go away.
Right.
Ever. It is ingrained in us. It's a whether it's learned, whether it's pattern behavior, whether it's clinical, whether it's genetic. Most of the time it's genetic, but it doesn't matter. It's always going to be there.
Okay, so let's bring it a little closer. We're not necessarily. Are we talking more about things like divorce, deaths in the families, losing a job, things that affected us in that way?
Yes.
Than something more chemical based.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a great way to word that, because I would say yes, because there's a lot of stuff that influences our present. Just want to take that away. There's a lot of things that influence us, but it is more of the behavioral stuff, the experiences we've had in the past, not the chemical imbalances that are causing clinical illnesses.
So having abandonment issues, having insecurities because we had super strict parents, lost like no confidence or not having a backbone for things. Those are things that we can change.
Those are things that we can realign our focus and learn from.
But why? Okay, so why would somebody be addicted to that? Why would you hold on to abandonment issues or feelings of insecurity?
That's a great question. And it's, again, an addiction in that if things are going well, because we've experienced all this negative stuff, when things start going well, it's almost insane. It doesn't feel normal because of the negative past. So that when things start going well for us, we have to find something else to focus on, some other negativity. And it could be, let's say, a breakup or a divorce. And then you go back to that. You go back to that divorce. Well, what if I had done this? What if I had done that? What if I had just been there for more? Or what if I hadn't cheated on her? What if I hadn't done this?
But even though things are going well, we need something negative.
We need to bring some sort of discomfort to our lives.
Because Madeline's asking why do we hold on? Okay, so again, putting myself on the hot seat. My first relationship as an adult, my live-in relationship, there was a lot of issues, and we're not friends on Facebook, so who cares? But there was drugs, and there was cheating, and there was miscommunications and verbal mistreatings. Obviously, I left that relationship, and the relationship I'm in now is a good relationship. We communicate well. We don't do drugs. We're very committed to each other. There's a lot of loyalty. Yet, I will find the one moment in the conversation to pull on, like a string. Like, oh, he said this bad thing to me, and boom, I'm immediately a 22-year-old kid in my first relationship, and all that pain comes back. Is that kind of what we're talking about?
That's an extreme example, but absolutely.
Yeah. Of course, I'm always extreme
right.
in my life.
No, absolutely. Because suddenly, again, the 22-year-old, that is all you have to rely on, that experience, because you haven't experienced enough positive things in your past to help support this positive moment in your present.
Okay.
And so when it starts feeling right, it actually feels abnormal. And so you're going to go back to 22-year-old that says, oh, well, this is how this situation happened back then. So that past moment equals this present moment, even though there's a long distance of time in between those moments, because that's ingrained into your emotional well-being and who you are as a person, and you've hung on to it. Instead of letting it go and learning from it, you are going to put that in your present relationship, and it's going to cause some limiting, it's going to limit you.
Is it always obvious what we're holding on to?
No.
No?
No. The easy answer is no. And I want to get to Madeline's question, but the easy answer is no. It isn't obvious. Sometimes, and I'm sure you've experienced, if you get upset with your partner, or you are in a situation, let's say you're on an audition, for example, and you don't get the part, and it messes you up more than anything. And it was a one line, and
right.
It was just like, and you are so messed up from rejection, and you suddenly think, why am I so messed up like this? You don't know. You wouldn't know unless you meditated on it and went back into the past and said, well, what is this? What am I comparing this moment to? Right. Same thing with your partnership is that, again, you won't always know. You're so upset, but there's no sane reason for you to be upset.
Okay. So now we're going back to square one. Square one, I'm holding on to a bad memory, which is this addiction to the past. Mm-hmm. On the right side, we know exactly what it is we're addicted to, and we know exactly why we're holding on to it. So that's easy. Like you can go and you can talk about it, you can go to therapy, and boom, you can fix it. On the left side, we have, I don't know why. I don't know what's triggering this emotion. How can we identify the emotion? How can we identify the source of that emotion?
Unfortunately, let's say you had never had this session, we never did this. In this moment, there's really not a lot you could do in that moment because it would take time. You would have to journal. You'd have to write down what's going on, what happened. There would be a discovery with yourself. And it's what I do with my clients is that I help train them to identify when you're linking the present to the past. So essentially the difficult answer is it takes time to train your brain to get there. And if something happened and you're triggered and you don't know why, there's nothing you can do in that moment except embrace the moment and realize that you're being influenced by the past.
Got it.
And also, there's a lot of the modern human is being influenced a lot by hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary psychology, in that we are survivors. We do whatever we can to survive. So just a side example, suicide is insane for us because it goes against our primitive instinct to survive. So there's a lot of stuff, a lot of relationship stuff, technology stuff that is causing this modern insanity because it's going against all of our primitive nature. So when it comes to why we're connecting to the past so much is that we are creatures of habit. And that's what we've done because we can see patterns. It's one of the things that has gotten us so far. We can see patterns, we can see certain things. And because this happened 5 minutes ago, we think in our primitive minds that it could happen again if these situations are met. If the same situations are hung on to, then it's going to happen again. So because of the survival mechanism that we have that pattern behavior, that we identify those patterns, and that's how we get there because of that. But it doesn't mean that we're always going to go there if we can challenge ourselves and sort of take a step back and say, okay, I'm being triggered by the past. The present doesn't equal the past. The future doesn't equal the past. The past is in the past.
Right.
This is a new situation. How do I solve this now?
Got it. Okay. For those of you joining us, we are with Life Coach Tommy. This is Put Together Conversations. And today's topic is addiction to the past. And we're talking how past experiences can trigger us to now. And they're big bumps in the road. These are like walls that can stop us from a relationship, a good job, just being happy. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're a pessimist or that you're depressed all the time, right?
Right.
There's a confusion. There could be a confusion there.
Yeah. I mean, it's simply acknowledging that it's a survival mechanism. It's what we're using in our present to survive, essentially. But the easy answer to figure out what to do in the present moment is just to acknowledge that the past does not equal the future. The past does not equal the present. As long as you have a good mindset and well-being, the past, what happened in the past stays in the past.
Right.
Now, there are things that could happen again. There are things that do happen again. But again, it's a new situation, and our reaction to it, this goes back to another session, our reaction to it will influence how this situation is dealt with.
Okay. So we're obviously not going to react the same way we did when it originally happened.
Yes and no. We could react.
I hate when you do the yes and no parts.
We could, Madeline asked about journaling, and I definitely want to go into that, but we could respond the same way if we're not aware. Because what our brain wants to automatically do is respond the exact same way we did back then. Because this is how, because I've survived this long, this is what happened back then, so I want to respond the same way that happened. So I'm going to respond now the same way. But if we can acknowledge that this is a new situation, even though it's similar to what happened in the past, it is new just by the mere fact that it's a different moment in time.
Right.
We are different, and we can control our reaction to the situation.
Okay.
And more often than not, we'll have a better reaction to it.
So since we're on this left side road, we've identified what that trigger is that stimulates those feelings of, you can fill in the blank here, whatever is in your life. In order to not keep repeating those, we need to confront them, correct?
Yeah.
Is this where like the journaling would come in, therapy?
Absolutely, yeah. So Madeline had two questions. One was about why do we hold on? And again, I hope I answered that, Madeline. It's essentially a survival mechanism. We hang on to those emotions. We hang on to that so that we can, we think that we're learning from that situation, and we think that we're going to see it. Because how many times have something happened to us, like, I swear this is never going to happen to me ever again.
Right.
And then it happens again.
Yeah.
So we're never going to let this happen to us again mentality. And so we see it coming. And so we're like, oh, here it comes. That moment that happened in the past, here it comes. But it doesn't always end up that way. But our reaction is now primed to be ready for it because of our survival mechanism. And about journaling, so this is kind of off on a tangent, but the reason why journaling is so effective, especially with what we're talking about, addiction to the past, is it just literally gets us out of our head and allows us to look at things objectively. I always encourage my clients to journal if they're not, and to go into philosophy of mind or even general neuropsychology. Your thoughts, these thoughts that we're having, they're not real, in a sense where a doctor couldn't open up your brain and say, "Oh, look, those are the thoughts. Those are the. You see he's thinking about pizza right now. See, there's yeah. Pizza." Our thoughts are literally just chemical and electrical impulses, reactions happening inside of our brain. That's it. And because they're not real, they stay in our brain. Our brain has such a vivid imagination, and I want to talk about how that also affects the past.
I have stories on that one.
Our brain has such a vivid imagination that we start thinking about that stuff, and we usually start exaggerating stuff, and we start imagining things worse than they actually are, worse than they actually were, worse than they ever will be. And so the only way to make our thoughts real is to either write them down or record our voice. Because once we get them out and we write them down, then reading is, so emotions are a right brain activity, whereas reading and thinking is a left brain activity.
And again, to put a context, it's long story short, but for those of you who have been following me for a while know that I had a near-death experience while I was recuperating from cancer. So I ended up in the hospital, and it still haunts me. There's still a lot of residue there. Going to the dentist, because I have high blood pressure, whenever they have to do, which is why I'm talking funny, I have a partial in there right now, temporary. Every time they have to do anesthesia, something triggers. And my pressure goes up a little bit. It always does. But I immediately will text Christian so that he knows where I am. Yeah. Because if I die in the dentist chair, nobody's gonna know where I am. And I start sweating, and of course my pressure goes up again, and then the dentist gets all worried. And every time I go to the dentist, I'm like,
relax, meditate. Yeah.
But of course, you people are going, does that really happen? Yes, it really happens in my head. Because you're talking about thoughts. I'm like, I'm sure people could see my thoughts. There's chaos going there. when around me, everybody's going, it's just anesthesia, dude.
Right.
Calm down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and again, like you're having those thoughts, and I would encourage you, if you don't already, journal, write down reflect on that moment and journal on what your thought process was. Because once you get it out of your head and onto a piece of paper, now we drift away from the emotion, and now we're triggering our the thinking side of our mind. Actually, this is the left side. Oh no, I was right. The thinking side, I naturally went there because that's where my brain wanted to go, because it knows what side it is. But I can't tell my left from my right. Anyways, the thinking side of my brain is now reading what's happening. And so now we can look at our thoughts objectively, and we can analyze that doesn't make any sense. Why did I react that way? That doesn't make any sense. And I keep losing that. So that's why I always encourage journaling, especially when it comes to the past, because if something happens and we're triggered and the triggering came from the past, like I mentioned, our brain has a very vivid imagination, an extremely vivid imagination. And I always assure my life coach clients, I tell them, the things that happened in the past were neither as good nor as bad as you imagine, period. We always imagine things worse than they were or better than they actually were. And also, as far as the future is concerned, the things that are coming to you will not ever be as great or as bad as you imagine. So, and again, that's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just the way it is. So journaling and writing it down will get you out of your head and really analyze, not the way it really was, but just an objective viewpoint.
So before we move on from the journaling part, is there a correct or incorrect way of journaling?
I would say no. Well,
yes and no.
Yes and no. I would say there's no correct way to journal, as long as you're honest with yourself. Sometimes my clients, and I'm really good at calling them out because I can see when they're kidding themselves. I had one client recently that she was kept saying she was okay. She was okay. Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, things are good. Yeah, I'm okay. But because I'm a trained life coach, I know when people are bullshitting themselves. And I asked her, "Are you really okay? I mean, you're saying you're okay, but are you really okay?" And then she literally broke down in tears, and it was just like, finally I was able to get some honesty out of her, some authenticity. She wanted to be okay. Like, we always want to be okay.
Right.
But most of the time, especially if we're in a life coach situation where we're in a session, we're not okay. And so I was able to get that out of her.
Is that an example of thinking that things were better than they really were? Like, again, I put myself out there, but I almost died. I mean, 5 more minutes, I wouldn't have made it to the hospital. But I will joke about it, and I'll make fun of it, and I've used it in my stand-up. But it does trigger. I mean, I get sick, or I get hurt, or something happens, and it automatically comes back to me.
Yeah.
But you'll ask me, and I'll be like, "Oh no, everything's cool. I'm Garza. I'm Daniel Garza. Nothing affects me." And then the moment I'm alone, I'm like, so we can exaggerate things and make them worse, but we can also downplay things and make them better.
The other way around.
Okay.
Yeah. We can downplay things and make them worse, and we can exaggerate things and make them better. Mentally.
Oh, you just worked my brain there for a minute.
So, because if we're downplaying, and this goes into this is drifting away from our main topic, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if we downplay something, then we're not addressing it. We're kind of pushing it away. And I always tell my clients, well, wait a minute, let's talk about that, because I think it's very important for someone to own the way they're feeling and own whatever's happening to them. Because when you do that, then you can deal with it. If someone is suicidal, they're depressed, they need to acknowledge that they're suicidal and depressed. Because if they don't, if they think, oh, I'm okay, if they downplay that they're suicidal or depressed, then this is not cliche, it's actually very powerful. It's in Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous. The first step to solving a problem is admitting you have one.
Right.
It's cliche because it's used a lot. But the reason it's so important is that you can't you should avoid downplaying anything as far as any sort of difficulties, because downplaying them, psychologists would call it suppression, is that you're suppressing it, and it needs to be addressed. Because once you bring, to get really symbolic and sort of metaphorical, once you bring the beast out into the open, you can finally fight it and conquer it.
Right.
Because if you don't bring the beast out, then the beast is just going to lurk around and fuck up everything. Sorry, I don't know if we can cuss on this, but I can never remember. But
of course we can.
But it'll fuck up everything around you. It'll fuck up your foundation, essentially. But once you bring it out and you can see it and you can visualize it, then you can sort of, because we have that survival mechanism, we can figure out how to defeat it. But we're never going to get there if we keep downplaying it.
Yeah. So for those of you joining us, this is Putting Together Conversations, spin-off of the podcast. On today's show, my guest co-host is life coach Tommy, and we're talking about addiction to the past. We've kind of like expanded a little more because I always tend to bring all my problems. I want Tommy to fix me. That's what I want, and he's not doing it. He keeps bringing me back. Yeah. So the original conversation was how we are addicted to our past and how it controls our present. Again, one of those cliches. But there are people who say, you don't. I think we talked about it a little bit. Don't look into the past. Don't worry. Stop looking at the past.
Let the past go.
Go in the future because it's holding you back. But I always feel like I don't know where I'm going unless I know where I came from, and I need to check in and go, okay, I was really screwed up in my 20s. I was a drug addict, an alcoholic. I'm not now. I'm in a better situation. But if I not keep looking back, but if I don't take a peek every once in a while to remind me that I am moving forward professionally, personally, then I don't know. I feel like I'm not assessing myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's what I tell my clients is that there are 3 reasons to use the past, because the past is an extremely effective tool. But I tell my clients is that, yeah, it's okay to look back, but when we're walking forward, and because we're always moving, we're always time traveling into the future. No matter what you do, there's nothing you can do that will prevent you from moving forward second by second. So we're always going forward, no matter what, whether we like it or not. And what happens when you walk forward, and let's say you're walking ahead and you're looking behind you while you're walking, you have no idea what's coming. So you could trip, you could fall. So what I teach my clients is how to build a rear view mirror, so that when you need to look into the past, you still have your eyes on the road, but you can look in the rear view mirror, not turn completely around. Because once we turn completely around, we've lost sight of this entire field in front of us. And that's where people get trapped, is they turn completely around and look into the past, and they stop moving forward psychologically. Their body moves forward, but they're not moving forward psychologically. And so I help my clients build a review mirror, so they, like I said, so they can keep their eyes on the road. But I tell them there are only 3 reasons to look in the past. 1 is use it as a teacher. Learn from all your mistakes. So, like what you were mentioning is learn from stuff. The past is the most valuable teacher ever. And that's how we move forward, that's how we grow, is by making mistakes and learning from them. The second reason is to, just like what you said, is using it as a barometer to show ourselves how far we've come. Because a lot of my clients, they think their life sucks. It's like, well, where were you 5 years ago? They didn't have a place to live. Some clients weren't doing what they wanted to do with their life, and now they are. Other clients were single, lonely, and depressed, and now they're with somebody. So I show my clients that use the past to show yourself how far you've come. And the third reason is that kind of use it as a picture, because there are beautiful memories from your past.
Right.
And so you don't want to live, because you can't relive the past, because again, that takes you out of the present. But you can look at the past as a picture, and it's like, oh wow, there was that cruise that we went on. That was amazing. That helped our relationship grow. They can look at that trip to Europe, or even the bad stuff. It's like, oh, there was that relationship, 6 months of it went up and then it crashed. That sucked, but I grew from it. And again, you're not reliving, you're not re-experiencing that moment. You're just looking at that picture, and it's almost like looking at a picture of an ex-girlfriend. It's like, what the fuck was I thinking?
Haven't we all done that?
Right. So those are the 3 reasons you can use the past, but notice that we're about to have a guest star. Know that those three elements are not robbing you of the present moment. They're just showing you how to enjoy the present. Yeah.
All right, and for the people watching, can you say the 3 reasons one more time?
First reason is using it as a teacher, learning from your mistakes. Second reason is using it as a barometer to show yourself how far you've come. Because today is much different than yesterday. Today is much different than 5 years ago. And the third reason is just look at it as a picture. Don't relive the moments, but look at it like you would, the bad moments, like I mentioned, is like looking at a picture of an ex-girlfriend and thinking, what the fuck was I thinking?
All right.
But you can look at the good moments too. Again, don't relive it. When we relive it, we kind of yearn for that again, and it's just not going to happen the way it happened again. You'll have another cruise, but it probably won't.
I'm laughing because his kitty is. If you're watching this on Instagram, there's a cat and the.
Yeah, we have a guest star.
He hasn't made it to the Facebook. There we go. So for those of you watching again, joining us, this is Conversations with Life Coach Tommy. Today we're talking about addiction to the past, and so far we've covered the importance of remembering things so that if something is triggered or something comes back or stimulates positively or negatively, you can identify it better. Things won't go away automatically. You can't just say, oh, I'm triggered because of my mom then spanked me when I was 5 years old. I'm all better.
Right.
Doesn't work that way.
No.
How does it work?
Well, if your mom spanked you and that's what you want to focus on, essentially, I would encourage people. There's a very powerful book. In fact, I think I have it right here.
How convenient.
I don't get paid to promote his book, but it's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I highly recommend this book. It connected with me on a level that was very profound. He's very honest. Some people are not. They're kind of turned off by the. It's an anti-self-help book. They're kind of turned off by some of the stuff, and essentially what he talks about is what to give your fucks about, what to give a fuck about, and so what to focus on, what brings value and what doesn't bring value. If focusing on your mom spanking you as a kid, if that's bringing value to your present moment, then okay, let's focus on that. Let's talk about that. How is that bringing value? What are you learning from that? Is it teaching you to be a better parent so as not to spank your kid? Is it, showing you some deep-seated emotion that maybe turned, you have some sort of Electra complex or an Oedipus complex? If that's bringing you value, then let's talk about it. Let's focus on it. But if it's destroying you and hurting your present relationship with your mom because you're holding that animosity against her, then we have a problem. Then you're addicted to the past.
So for those of you, if you have any questions, we're open to questions, whether you're on Instagram or on Facebook. Make sure you send the questions over to Life Coach, and we will answer those on the air. We still have about 15 minutes to go, so we still got some stuff. It sounds to me, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget, it sounds like life experience hoarding. Mm-hmm. Like we want to hold on to all these memories because they have some value, whether good or bad. But the good ones, we expect them to do good. We want them to be there. But when the bad ones show up, all chaos breaks loose and we feel like our world's come to an end. Does that sound about right?
Absolutely. And my clients they probably get tired of me talking about this, but it's so true in all aspects of life, is that there has to be balance. There has to be balance in everything you do in your life. And there are some aspects of the past that are helpful to you. There are some that are not helpful. But you don't have to focus on letting the past go, mainly because you can't. But secondly, the effort of trying to let the past go just makes the past want to stay alive more. It's almost like trying to talk about the beast, like trying to kill a beast that loves being beat up because it makes it stronger. That's what the past is doing. But on the to talk about the good stuff and the bad stuff, it's a bit ironic because you would think that you shouldn't focus on the negative and you should always focus on the positive. But the irony is that you should actually see what lessons can be learned from the negativity, relish the good memories, but don't focus too much on the good memories because, again, it'll rob you of the present because people get into the good old days syndrome. Where
And we've been through that in the last couple of years, haven't we?
Yeah. So I always advise my clients, like, okay, well, are you focusing on that positive memory because those were the good old days? Because right now, in this moment, to get really philosophical, we're living in the past. In that, right, this moment, when you achieve your successes and I achieve my successes, we're going to meet each other at some cast party or some rap party or some awards party. And it's like, remember that time where we used to do these life coach sessions, these Facebook sessions? So this is even the past. But what happens is when we do that, we're talking about the past, we're talking about this stuff. We're at a fucking award ceremony. Let's enjoy the award ceremony. Let's not, relish on, this is all positive. This is great stuff. But let's not relish on it because let's enjoy the award ceremony.
There is such a thing as too much reminiscing.
Exactly. And again, I call it the good old days syndrome because a lot of people, this is a terrible image, but I envision this old man sitting on his front lawn drinking a beer. His life is miserable. He has chosen to make his life miserable because right now, based on his perception, is not as good as it was 30 years ago. And so he has chosen to wear his tank top, his shorts, drinking that beer on the front porch, always complaining about today and how much it sucks.
Got it. There was one thing that you touched on before we kind of wrap it up a little bit, but the balance, because on my spiritual job, for those of you, I'm a Reiki master, and my clients, I always talk to them about balance. And I'm glad that we kind of agree on that. I tell them all the time, it's like, life is a balance. The universe is a balance. It's good and bad.
Yes.
There's no such thing as balance if everything is good. There has to be some bad things that happen to put things in perspective. If you're going to laugh and you're going to cry, there's birth and there's death, and that's the balance of life. So I'm glad we both agree on that part. We got about 10 minutes. Is there something that we haven't touched on yet that you had on your notes?
Yeah, the last thing is essentially there are a lot of, I hate saying there are a lot of people.
Y'all people.
There are people whom have hired me as a life coach who they put so much focus on the past. And what I want to say, and sort of not really a subject, but just kind of a message, if we, myself, you, these people who focus on the past, if they could realign their focus and put as much energy as they do on the present and just pull that energy away and focus on the present and enhancing the present and bringing into the present attributes that will make the present more enjoyable, crazy things will happen, amazing things will happen, and they can move their life forward. Because, again, if we're focused so much on the past, it's robbing us of the present. And we have the energy. We have the energy to focus on the present, but we're so past focused or future focused, and that can be a topic. Addicted to the future is something completely different. But we're so past focused or we're so future focused that we lose sight of this present that's happening until this becomes the past. And then our new present, we're looking at the past wishing we had been more present.
If you're as confused with that part as I am, you might want to rewind this and check it out again. But no, it makes sense that when I have issues right now with something that's triggered a feeling, an emotion, I will go to the past and wonder why it happened, how it happened, what I could have done. And then I jump over to the future. How is it going to affect me? Why are more people doing more than me? Why I'm not as successful? And then it's a jump between back and forth. Like, well, if I had done this when I was 15, I would be more successful now, and I would be doing better by next year. But I'm not focusing on what I can do right now to make the things better. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. There's absolutely nothing we can do with the past. Absolutely nothing we can do to change the past. It is what it is.
Unless you're Stewie Griffith, then you're on.
Yeah.
Family Guy reference.
Unless someone figures out time travel, just be careful because there's that whole space-time continuum thing. But
if you find me in the past,
right.
tell me to go to acting school.
Right.
So, we have about 10 more minutes. Again, we have 10 more minutes. If you have a question or a comment on what we're talking about, please post it and we'll read it. But we're talking about addiction to the past, and the concept that Life Coach Tommy was putting out is the rear view mirror concept. And that is using the rear mirror as a teacher, a barometer, and a memory, a photo memory of the past. But that's it. Don't live in the past. You can want to bring it back as much as you can, but it's not going to be of any use unless I'm trying to find the right word, but I can't. I lost it right now. But if you're using the past to make today better, whether it's a good memory or a bad memory, then that's a good focus.
Yes.
But if you're using it for resentments, for shaming, for self-belittling, whatever, then the past is doing you no good.
Exactly.
We good?
And a good exercise, is to just, and this is something that you have to train yourself to do. It's not something that somebody's watched this video and tomorrow they're going to be, oh, I can do it now. It's maintaining self-awareness and asking yourself the questions in the moments, learning how to. We haven't.
Oh, there you go.
It's learning how to ask yourself the difficult questions. Is this bringing value to my life? Is this bringing value? Should I give a fuck about this right now? Or is this a waste of time?
That sounds like this whole new concept of hoarding, where this...
Not a new concept, but yeah.
the whole thing, I mean, no, the one where, does this bring me joy?
Yeah.
And if not, throw it away.
Yeah.
So memories can be that, like, do I give a fuck about what happened in 1985? And is it really doing me good? Nope. Stop worrying about it. Madeline says, this conversation reminds me of the Black Mirror episode where they can rewind their past memories and see them again, but it ends up destroying their life in present. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that episode, but I could see that being written. And it's so funny. It's almost like she knows where to stand. Look at her.
The cat has been trying for 30 minutes to get on our show. Finally.
But yes,
we're not paying your residuals or anything.
I actually would like to see that show, but so my explanation of what I think where they got with that is a bit uneducated because I haven't seen that show. But I could imagine somebody spending all that time rewinding and looking at the past and looking how they dealt with situations and looking at themselves in general and how they reacted. They're probably going to be very constantly disappointed in the way they reacted and the way they did things, and also just not. I mean, I can imagine even there's a situation where they want to, because it doesn't sound like it's a time travel situation. It sounds like it's just a memory thing, and because it's not time travel, there's nothing they can do to fix it. So I mean, I don't know what they did, but I mean, imagine, not going to some event where you could have prevented your loved one from passing away or dying and getting an auto accident, and you have to relive that moment, rewind that moment. That's got to be treacherous to, and that's got to be treacherous to their present existence.
Yeah, because I had a lot of, for several years, I would go back and remember the first time I tried Coke, and I would constantly relive that moment. thinking, had I done something different? But I did it, and I went on a 16-year drug journey. But that got me to where I am now. Had I not had that experience and everything that came with it, I would not be the person that I am today. So I found the lesson.
Yeah.
This is what we're talking about. We found the lesson in what it was. Yeah. So we're running out of time. We have about 5 more minutes left to go. Thank you for joining us. I know we were running a little late, but thank you for following us even in the setup session. Life Coach Tommy, my guest, co-hosted it on Put It Together Conversations. The subject, addiction to the past. If you want to go back and rewatch this, you can see some of the lessons that I will post under the lessons. You can also follow us on YouTube. Go find me, Daniel Garza, and you can watch this on there. Please share this with your friends if you found it interesting. Where can they find you?
Instagram, Tommy Lee Kirby, and lifecoachtommy.com is my website. Speaking of sharing with friends, I'd like to make a little announcement, if it's okay.
Please.
So I've been wanting, I can't find anybody to help me with this, but I've been wanting to do a research project. It's a research project on social psychology. I literally just want to hang out with a bunch of people that I don't know at a bar or a restaurant and watch them talk to each other. Basically, I'd just be that creepy guy in the corner or at the table. So it's for research, but it can't be somebody that I know. It has to be somebody like I'm not familiar with. Like I couldn't do it with you because I know you. So if you know anybody who'd be interested in just having me literally just sit there and watch people talk to each other while I take notes, I do have goals and questions that I want to answer on this social psychology research project, and it is to help me be a better actor and be a better life coach.
Cool. So if you're in the LA area and you wouldn't mind Life Coach Tommy watching you drink and talk.
Right. Everybody has to be in on it.
Yeah.
Everybody has to know what's going on.
Which, creepy in LA? Do we really know what creepy is in LA? Do you have time for one more question before we go?
Absolutely. So if one lives in the now, how can one draw from favorite memories? Really good question. And we covered that, but I'll go over it again. It's essentially, I'll just review the three reasons why, or the 3 reasons that the past is useful is 1, to teach yourself. The second one is a barometer to show yourself how far you've come in life. And the third one, and this is answering your question, David, is that use the past as a picture. Not to relive the memories because that causes a yearning sensation because we want to go back to that moment that we can't go back to, but use it as a picture. So your favorite memories, if you have a cruise or just a really nice vacation or a moment that brought you so much joy, maybe a child's laughter or whatever it was, look at it as a picture. And as long as it's not robbing you of enjoying the present, then absolutely enjoy those favorite memories. You can draw from favorite memories all the time, as do I. The problem comes is when we're suffering from good old days syndrome, that those favorite memories are the good old days, because right now can be the good old days. You just have to realign your focus.
Is that like literally looking at yourself when you were thinner or more active, or when you thought you were more successful? Like, are those good memories to go, oh man, like I remember when I did that, and regaining that confidence or regaining that stimulation? Or
Absolutely, if it helps you, because one of the things that I do with people who want to lose weight, I'll give you a very specific example. For people who want to lose weight, I get them to take a picture of them now, and then I'll have them take a picture of them when they've lost however much weight they want to lose. Because what happens with life is that we do get sidetracked. And so what we can do is we can look at those pictures and it's like, I've done this before. I can do this again.
Right.
So not necessarily reminiscing of, oh man, I was so much thinner, I was so much more successful, that's a waste, because that's good old days syndrome.
Right.
But if you're using it being like, okay, how did I do that back then? And how can I do that now? Because now could be different. Like you could have a health issue. Like for me, for example, I have sciatica. So there are certain exercises that I'm never going to be able to do that I could do when I was 18.
Right.
But it doesn't mean I can't. I can't because now I've lost 25 pounds, and so I did something.
He had to throw it in. By the way, if you saw the poster for the ad for this episode today, you might have seen that the pictures changed. He changed his picture because he lost some weight, so I had to change my picture because I was like, "Well,
I want the same color scheme.
I want to look better."
And you're welcome.
David, by the way, is a longtime follower. I put it together, the podcast. Thank you, David, for chiming in. So, guys, we are out of time. Again, thank you for coming back on the show. We were off the air for a little while. There was a lot of things going on in my life, but we're back. Stay tuned. At 4 o'clock from here, I'm going to another guest co-host. Pritesh Shah will be on the show in a little while. At 4 o'clock, we'll be back with another episode of Conversations. We're kind of catching up on stuff. The topic of that is victimization. So how to avoid that, which is kind of a continuation of this. Is oddly enough, both of my guest co-hosts who picked their own topics are kind of like this follow-up to one another, which is really kind of cool.
Very cool.
So we're here. We're talking about addiction to the past, and in the next episode at 4 o'clock, chime in. We're talking about victimization and how that affects your life. Which, again, for me, this is a really important week. Again, on Friday, I'm celebrating 13 years clean and sober. I want to send a big hello to all the brothers out in Dickinson, Texas, Bay Area Recovery Center, where I got sober. I was there for rehab. Thank you. I guess my lifetime sponsor, who was my first sponsor, Tim. Thank you for he still to this day, 13 years later, sends me a message daily on text.
Oh, wow. That's good.
And so and then I respond to those. I feel obligated every time, like, yes, I got it. But before we go, that's one of those things, talk about memories. I remember going into rehab and how great I felt. And every time I don't feel well for some reason, I go back to that memory and how awesome I felt. So I can recapture it. Not as I'll never be there again. Before we go, and this might be a good topic for next time, we'll never be who we were before. And I think that's one thing that people hold when we hold on to those memories or those thoughts. It's like, I want to recapture, I want to go back, but we'll never be back who we are, correct?
Never. It's psychologically impossible. It's on a brain science level, it's impossible. But yeah, and just on just the way time grows and time moves, it's never going to happen. Just something I've had to accept, and obviously I'm thankful that you're so persistent to be a part of my life these days, but I've had to accept, because there was something that depressed me a while ago, because I had left college and I tried to stay in touch with everyone, but then I just started losing touch with people, and I was kind of getting caught up in the good old day syndrome where I want to be back with my fraternity brothers and hang out and have drinks, and then I came to the conclusion and had to accept that will never happen again, because I'm not that person anymore. And I never will be that person again. I'm not going to be for one, I'm not going to be in Houston. I'm not going to be in college, and I'm not going to be the heavy drinker I was. Not that it was a bad thing. It's just I'm just not there anymore. Right. And so all those things had to happen for me to hang out with the high volume of fraternity brothers that I hung out with. And so because of that, that's just not who I am anymore, and I never will be. And I've had to accept that. So he gets to sit here with me once in a while. With you guys. For now, guys,